Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Red Badger's Generation Z loyalty event, or as our American cousins would say, Gen Z. Just to lock in the demographic this evening, Gen Z, or the Zoomer generation, were born between 1997 and 2012, so effectively the under 25s. And for those attending in that age group this evening, just nod knowingly and don't judge us too harshly. Gen Z are the largest generation ever in the US, as well as the fastest growing consumer market in the UK and Europe. This emerging buyer group are values driven, almost to an activist level, and they're fickle, they're opinionated, but they do love a bucket list. But at the same time, they're the most introverted generation alive today. But of course, every generation is shaped to some extent by technology. Baby boomers by consumer electronics, Gen X by the rise of computers and personal devices. I still fondly remember my Sony Walkman. Millennials by mobility and the internet, and Gen Z by the smartphone and social media. So as we take a closer look today at Gen Z, and they've become the dominant consumer, it's no surprise that they spend an average of 4 hours, yes, 4 hours on their smartphone. Effectively, loyalty and retention strategies have to engage across multiple touch points, and the smartphone being at the center of that. And the incentive is huge for companies. It's estimated that consumer loyalty programs are currently valued at 2.5 billion, and this is expected to grow to 10 billion by 2027. My name is Gary Gould, and as well as being Red Badger's marketing director, I have the privilege of being your host this evening as we explore the topic of customer loyalty through the lens of Gen Z. This event is brought to you by Red Badger as part of our Badger sessions. Essentially, we explore different themes and topics related to digital products, and we're tied in terms of our focus being on blue chip organizations, very large organizations. Of course, we appreciate that you have set aside time this evening to join these sessions, and we also like to send our guests a little something. Given it's 5 p.m. in the UK, I think you can enjoy at least 2 of these special cocktails from our friends over at Myatt's Fields over the next 60 minutes. But don't worry, there's no Squid Game forfeit. If you've already sampled one of those cocktails, you're in good company. That's what I'm going to say, because I definitely have tried those cocktails. Now, we have a fantastic speaker lineup. Each one will give you a different perspective on Gen Z and why they think differently in terms of work, values, and the brands that they want to associate with. Firstly, we have Joel, who will talk about digital product companies in this context of loyalty as a product. Next up is Chris, who will zoom out from a market perspective and talk about the key drivers and values that are motivating Gen Z in different ways from previous generations. And finally, Ryan will talk about the real-life calibration that Nando's have gone through in terms of their loyalty program to tune in to Gen Z's expectations. But of course, as always, we look for feedback and comments for topics that we can explore for future events. So we have a quick survey that takes less than 60 seconds, but also supports a great initiative. Red Badger will donate 5 free breakfasts for every completed survey, and it supports disadvantaged children who are at risk of hunger. The link will pop up later. We'll have a QR code so you can find your inner Gen Z and take a picture of the screen, and it will take you straight to that survey. So in terms of the agenda, before we dive in, essentially 10 to 15 minutes it will take for every presentation to take place. We'll then move to the survey, and I'll publish that. And then we'll move to Q&A before we wrap up at the top of the hour. So please feel free, put your comments in, ask questions as we go, and we'll pick up those questions at the end of the session. So without further delay, I'll now hand over to Joel, who will take us through the first subject, which is loyalty as a product. Over to you, Joel.
Good afternoon / evening, everyone. The lighting is probably going to change as I'm speaking to you because there's a beautiful sunset going on outside my window. My name is Joel, and I'm one of the MDs at Red Badger. Over the last few years, I've been working with clients mainly in the retail, hospitality, and financial services sectors. Today, I'm going to share a few of my thoughts on the way modern loyalty is headed and how applying a product mindset can help loyalty programs. But first, it's probably worth me giving you a brief intro to Red Badger. We work mainly with large organizations and scale-ups, and we're typically engaged solving problems and building digital products that are core to the ongoing success of these organizations. These are the kinds of complicated challenges that excite us, and having the opportunity to influence the long-term success of our partners and putting their customers at the center of everything we do really motivates our teams. We believe that all companies are digital product companies, but whether or not they've realized this yet is just a matter of time. I've personally spent the last 20 years helping organizations with digital transformation. I've seen the transition from businesses that tried to use technology as a strategic advantage to the successes of those who embraced technology and digital and made it core to their businesses. Over the last 5 years, especially, there's been a mindset change, and companies born as product companies are infinitely more successful without any of the baggage of larger incumbents. Many of the clients we work with are experiencing significant digital disruption in their markets from those born digital product-first companies. A great example to highlight this are the traditional big banks having to respond to challenges like Monzo and Starling. I think most of us have experienced interacting with one of those challenger banks and have seen the results of a product mindset firsthand. The entirety of banking services provided by Monzo are designed around the customer from the ground up as a fully featured, coherent digital product. At Red Badger, we're helping organizations be more digital product minded, instilling that continuous product delivery mindset. I want to take 30 seconds to set the scene on modern consumers. I know Chris is going to get into a lot more detail on this, and Gen Z specifically a bit later, so I won't labor the points too much, but consider this a bookmark to insert a lot more insight in a few drinks' time. The key consumer trends over the last 10 years have led to an infinitely more connected consumer with access to always on digital. It's not just sitting there passively in the background either, it's shouting out for attention with things like notifications all the time. Access to the customer has become much easier as the barrier to entry is lower. However, it has also become more fragmented with many more channels or spaces where customers want to engage with brands. Expectations around what a great experience in digital and increasingly across channels should be have already been elevated, especially by these digital first product organizations. Everything needs to be joined up, integrated, easy, and instant. Standing out in that space is really hard. So why is loyalty difficult? I've pulled out a few interconnected themes which may resonate. Any loyalty scheme needs to provide an equitable value exchange. What behavior am I encouraging you as a customer to do more of, and what am I giving you in return? Modern consumers have higher expectations, especially around where they derive value. It's not just the free coffee. These higher expectations come at a time where the cost of providing benefits has increased, and that value exchange still needs to work for the business too in terms of an investment to drive revenue. Loyalty programs can also go stale. Pure points-based schemes are no longer enough to entice membership and drive loyalty on their own, meaning enthusiasm can be low and there is slower participation uptake. As time goes on, this can also mean reduced penetration, and if penetration drops, this can also impact the value for the business in that exchange. So we're giving away too much and not generating the increase in customer value we expect. Retention is really difficult. Competition is fierce, especially with the direct-to-consumer brands, as the barrier to entry for those brands is so low. Platforms like Instagram and TikTok make it really easy to target individual customers. Retention really relies on the customer perception of your brand and having an emotional connection beyond just points and rewards. Finally, always-on consumers and the sheer volume of digital channels means cutting through that noise is difficult. The number of schemes people engage with is not high, and stickiness is difficult to achieve. The average number of schemes participated in is around 15, 6 of which are actually used regularly. So brands that are doing well understand their customers' values and likes and try to create an emotional connection. So here's how things are changing for loyalty, and in a lot of cases, they already have changed. We know that feeling connected to a brand's purpose and having a personal relationship, caring about what a brand stands for, results in more engaged customers. We are increasingly seeing loyalty experiences that are tailored around brand purpose. There's a move towards a more holistic relationship with a customer rather than a purely transactional one. That means offering a variety of rewards depending on the individual and maybe choosing the moment the reward is offered and associating with specific contexts. There is so much opportunity around data, moving it closer to the experience and using it to influence behavior. All of these things together highlight the shift to a lower friction experience, which can in turn deliver more instant gratification. I guess the point I'm trying to make here is things got complicated. This really isn't something that you can just buy off the shelf anymore. Data has always been a huge part of loyalty from a commercial viability point of view, in order to maximize that customer lifetime value. Historically, this has been taking place behind the scenes in a data lake, far removed from the customer experience. But there's far more opportunity to be using that data intelligently, and Starbucks is a great example of this. They launched their AI platform called Deep Brew in 2019. I think chess fans will appreciate that name. It's a machine learning platform sitting on top of decades of customer data. Starbucks are really early in getting their apps out there and starting to collect data from usage. Their clever use of this data enables a very personalized experience, but it can also enable Starbucks to push tailor-made recommendations according to the time of day and the frequency with which a customer may usually visit one of their locations. Joel has normally picked up his flat white at Liverpool Street by now. How about we send him an offer in case he's nearby and forgot about his caffeine fix? Which would obviously never happen. Another area I'm finding really interesting right now is the paid loyalty space, or premium loyalty programs, as they're sometimes called. It's essentially a program where a subscription brings a bundle of benefits. Think Amazon Prime as a prime example. This is an evolution beyond the standard subscription model, where you're effectively just subsidizing the cost of something that can't be given away for nothing, like delivery. What's clever here is bundling together multiple benefits that are all of interest to your customer. Once a customer is part of a paid scheme, they'll use that scheme to take full advantage of the benefits they're contributing towards. So as these charts show, they'll buy more frequently, they'll be more likely to buy from you, and they'll spend more money for each transaction. So as you can see from the research, the value generated by the change in customer behavior is altering how brands are starting to think about premium loyalty. A great example of a premium loyalty program with loads of the stuff on the right-hand side of that list I showed you a minute ago is Lululemon. They're experimenting with a subscription-based loyalty program that carries a variety of benefits. There's free products when you sign up, ongoing discount, access to online workout sessions, physical in-store events like early access sales and in-person physical activity sessions. It's being piloted in a number of cities in the US and Canada, and wherever it's launched, it sells out. It's a mixture of transactional and experiential benefits, and it's an example of a brand putting their loyalty at the center of their business and how they identify with their customers. Athleisure is a really competitive playing field, but focusing on their brand values and rewarding loyalty that resonates with their customers is really, really smart. I guess the question we can ask ourselves is, can we make loyalty central to our business? So what does this mean for your customers, your product, and your businesses? Stop treating loyalty as though it's a separate entity and focus instead on how customers are interacting with your brand. You need to be thinking about how to reward all behavior across all parts of your product for all customer types. You need to be offering a far more nuanced experience with the customer at the center. If you do that, then you'll be in great shape to start shifting the dial. As we saw from that Lululemon example, they've put loyalty at the center of what they want their brand to mean. It's an extension of the experience, making it meaningful and essentially part of the IP of the business. The more we think about loyalty in this way, the more woven into the fabric of a business it becomes. It's about understanding the experience your customers want to have with your brand, what their values are and what's important to them, and how you can create that mutually beneficial two-way relationship. Which brings us back to some of the points I was making at the beginning about that product mindset. It's about putting our customers at the center of everything we do and instilling a continuous product delivery mindset. If you're continually releasing updates to your customers, you can get closer to their needs by understanding what they really want through short feedback loops and a test and learn approach. It's not about large projects anymore with a single big investment, a fixed duration that carry significant amounts of risk. It's about smaller, continuous investments, consistently delivering value to your customers, resulting in incremental returns on that investment for your business. Not embracing a product mindset and serving customer needs effectively while all those around you are essentially means that you're standing still or worse. So finally, in conclusion, I want to leave you with two thoughts. Firstly, we can treat a loyalty ecosystem as a product. Having a product thinking mindset to iterate your loyalty program around your customer will lead to far greater success. I know that Ryan's all over this approach and he'll be sharing some of his thoughts in a minute. And secondly, loyalty can be a revenue generating product in its own right. Moving forward, you might want to think about how your loyalty program can be closer to your core brand values and maybe even a revenue stream of its own. Thank you very much. Back over to you, Gary.
That's great. Thanks, Joel. Some fascinating thoughts there. So please add your questions into the comments. You must have some questions around paid loyalty or loyalty as a sort of revenue generating program. So thanks very much, Joel. Next up, we have Chris Sanderson, who's co-founder at the Future Laboratory. As I said, we're going to zoom out and look at it from a market perspective. So Chris, welcome to the stage, and I look forward to your session.
Gary, thank you very much, and hello everyone, good evening. My name's Chris. I'm co-founder of the Future Laboratory, and we are a trend forecasting, strategic innovation and consumer insight business. And in this presentation, I'm going to start to explore how I think really what is quite a diverse and disruptive cohort that we call Generation Z or Z are starting to demonstrate some really interesting and innovative mindsets and behaviors, especially when it comes to brand engagement and loyalty. Now, if I was going to ask you to take away one key learning from our research, it would be that we're talking about a generation that is hyper-aware, hyper-connected, and hyper-individual. And as a result, they are challenging brands in search of a more equitable value exchange. They're even more brand promiscuous than the millennials and that my generation, Generation Xers are. And living at the height of cancel culture, this generation is, I think more than almost any other, is highly educated in the woke washing behaviors of businesses. And as a result, they're often, I think, quite brand disloyal. And as a result, and I think the way technology is changing, it's certainly becoming easier for young people to support or to disown a brand when they feel they no longer uphold the same values that they do. Now, according to some recent research from that we've seen from Ipsos, 40% of Generation Z would boycott a brand compared to just 16% of their older cohort, the millennials. And further research from Ipsos shows that 86% of UK Gen Z shoppers have already walked away from a brand because they have heard or experienced something they didn't like about it. And I think this sense of brand disengagement is, for many of us who have grown up with brands and maybe now work as part of a brand, and where brand loyalty is so inimic to our experience of our relationship with consumerism, this kind of ability that this generation have to just switch off and change loyalty is actually both alarming from a professional perspective, but also quite perplexing, I think, from an engagement perspective. What we're beginning to see, I think, with our media landscape beginning to shift towards what you could call authentic activism and this sense of a more sort of an engagement with issues like environmentalism and ecology that's about inspiring accessibility, that's about getting stuck in, getting engaged, being part of the solution. Gen Z are already demonstrating how brands can act as partners and help facilitate the change they seek. And just those simple words, I think, start to demonstrate a very different type of hierarchy that is beginning to emerge. And if I was going to give you one word which maybe you don't use as part of your normal language every day, but it's great to maybe slide into a pub conversation, is this notion that we're moving from very much brand and social hierarchical engagements to heterarchical ones that are actually more networked, more federated, and more democratic. Heterarchic. It's a great word to just drop into a conversation. It makes you sound super smart. But clearly, I think with Gen Z, we're beginning to understand that their attitude towards problem solving, towards partnering, and towards engagement is already well underway. Take a look at this.
Honestly, how are we going to fix the planet? Sparked already. Finished farming right something is already correct. What other choice do we have? Die? We need to be positive. Okay, I'm positive we're going to die.
Pretty soon, we won't even be able to grow food because of climate change.
It's crazy. My dad says it's not the heat, it's the humidity.
And what does your dad know about humidity?
Everything. The world has way too many problems.
Someone's got to do something.
What about aliens? They'll probably know what to do. That's a stupid idea.
Okay, so the Made Good campaign there, looking at this idea of unwrecking the future, and even the language there, I think, really starts to show us about this shift towards a generation that are really, I think, trying to find their own sense of authenticity and realness, even if for us at times it feels cranky, it feels the reverse of authentic, and it just feels just something totally alien. But I think that's also a really exciting thing about this generation. I think we've been through a sort of 20 to 30 year period of brand cohesion and brand homogeneity. And now I think we're really beginning to see what, both with Generation Z and the generation coming behind them, Generation Alpha, this real sense of a different type of approach, a different tone of a voice, and a different opinion, which, you know, you either find scary or you find refreshing. And I personally find it super refreshing. We're beginning to see, hand in hand with this, of course, a new emerging class of community-run brands that really do understand this notion of partnering and engagement, that are turning customers and consumers into creators. And again, this collaborative approach towards brand is, again, part of the shift that we're beginning to see. We're beginning to see how brands are inviting their consumers to contribute to the aesthetic and the voice of their products. So we're seeing how, for example, the digital first fashion house, Finesse, is using data and AI, and most importantly, I think, community feedback to predict trends and also to produce virtually prototype designs that the users and their fans, their network, then vote on in order to work out what's going to be the next product category or the next, hopefully the next leading product development for Finesse. And equally on screen, what you've got here is Save Me, which is a direct-to-consumer water brand, a DTC brand, that's allowing customers to shape both the messaging and the design aesthetic that's available online and in store. And through their online portal, consumers can create their own canvas and use bold and striking typographical features and to create their own message on the cans, which they can then buy for themselves or upload onto the store and share with their friends. And this notion of collaboration, I think, is really so critical. We're seeing so much of this, I think, in the F&B category, and how also these two categories are expanding beyond products, and they're starting to offer useful services, platforms, communities, engagement portals, in a way to, I think, become more and more enmeshed in the everyday lifestyle of their customer, and to better understand customer mindset and customer behavior. We're seeing this quite a lot in the non-alcohol beverage sector. So one of the examples that we've looked at recently is the alcohol-free beer brand Freestar. They recently launched a free WhatsApp hotline, which offers advice for unemployed Gen Zs, and they can book sessions with experts from businesses like Propercorn or Tesla in the UK and the BBC, in order to get some one-to-one guidance on how to prepare for an interview, how to write a good CV. They get follow-up calls from their mentor. And it's very much about this idea of starting to think about how you accompany the consumer on their journey, on their life journey, and start to become a partner with them in their life. And this sense, I think, of how brands foster more loyal consumer relationships through actually presenting a very human face and a very human way of thinking about engagement is one of the most critical things that's going on here. It's that it's no longer based on loyalty points. It's not about earning money, earning credits, and kind of often those very kind of push-pull engagement factors that we've seen by previous brands. It's far more based on the understanding of, well, how would I look after my friend? What would I expect from my friend? What does loyalty mean to me and my best mate? And I think this means that we start to see some really interesting opportunities for creating meaningful and purposeful connections through service offerings outside of just our normal product categories. On screen is the low alcohol brand Jerry's, and I think they're another really great example, building its brand on the concept of championing both physical and mental health. It obviously ties in quite neatly with their no and low alcohol stance. And so they have a social club which offers events, pop-ups, and a roster of social gatherings that are aimed at building physical and mental well-being through their customer community. And when we spoke to Paul Weiber, who's the founder and CEO of Jerry's, he said to us, we also want to bring people together as part of the Jerry's Social Club, hosting regular events, rewarding them for their loyalty, and to be known as more than just a drinks brand. And I think that goes right to the heart of the issue here, which is this way in which we start to think beyond our core product offer and think about the peripherals that surround our brand, but that increasingly are often more meaningful than the actual product itself, the solid thing that we're used to. Increasingly relevant when, of course, you start to think about the metaverse and how more and more of us as consumers and customers are beginning to make that journey through from an understanding of a product as a solid thing and a product as something that might just sit within a digital environment, a digital universe, whatever that platform might be. Moving on, I think I mentioned DTCs earlier. The growth of the direct-to-fan relationship, of course, is increasingly important. And when we see platforms like OnlyFans and Patreon continue to grow at the time that more old-fashioned social platforms like Facebook, of course, are in decline, media brands are moving towards these more intimate fan engagement models because they can understand the traction and the engagement point. And this presents an opportunity, especially I think for food and drink brands, to take cues from creators in how they interact directly with fans and how they start to structure rewards into this personalized kind of offering environment. And I think really, as fandom and loyalty and also amplification start to all coalesce and come together, we start to see how things like the esports organization FaZe Clan has launched an incubator program that turns its fans into potential clan recruits, and how that really helps them to boost global conversations, content output, and also the promotion of its activities. So it's this far more integrated approach to thinking about above and below the line marketing, consumer engagement, product sales, and then, of course, loyalty programs, and really how we can't just take one in isolation. We have to keep thinking about what happens when we put all of those together. And again, I think that's such an important part of what we're looking at here. Now, for us, one of the other really interesting growth areas is this notion of crypto clubs. Crypto, a key kind of part of the language moving forward here as we start to think about the growth of cryptocurrencies, and we start to think about the idea of often really quite diverse, quite particular, and quite low-key memberships, groups, opportunities, and platforms. And we heard from Joel earlier, who talked about this point that our job, I'm afraid, for those of us on this call and watching who are marketers and who are involved in the notion of brand engagement, our jobs aren't getting any easier, they're getting harder. The idea of the one-size-fits-all marketing message just really doesn't wash anymore. And our job is to be as bespoke, as individual, as diverse, and as different as our customers are. And we've got to work quite hard in order to do that, because we've got to be able to find the right tone of voice, the right moment to have these conversations, and find ways of taking them off the main platform and have them in an ever-increasing world of difference and diversity, hugely different. And this sense, I think, of how we begin to see emerging platforms, which of course is central to the metaverse conversation that most of us are beginning to dip our toes into, is this notion of how we foster a more democratic relationship with users, how we start to maybe offer payment or partial ownership in exchange for their data, their content, and their engagement. And this is where I think brands are actually have a real opportunity, because what we're beginning to see in the long term over the next 10 years, of course, is how all of those traditional structures that were about the early days of the internet before 3.0 really starts to kick in was about free, and it was about what we got in exchange for our data for free. And we often didn't really realize as customers quite what we were giving away. And of course, as we now look at the power of GAFA or the global hegemony that we see from our Googles and our Apples and our Facebooks and our Sina Weibos, and our Tencents, we start to rethink and recalibrate actually what we're prepared to pay for and what we're prepared to give away. And this ongoing conversation is really, I think, sits again at the heart of what makes Gen Z so interesting, which is that they are part of a broker generation. It's about buying and selling. It's about trading. It's about partnership. It's about exchange. It's no longer this top-down relationship where you're the seller and they're the buyer, and therefore you sit at the top, you push and pull, and you just expect them to consume your product. I mean, those kind of days are over. And we see how, kind of websites and platforms like Sheet, depending on how you want to pronounce it, start to create new cultural reputations through things like tokens that provide tangible exposure for crypto creators, that take us beyond likes and follows, that start to take us into these relationships and these engagements where users can reward tastemakers with heat to show recognition for work, personalities, or contributions to the community. And it's this sense of how we reward, how we recognize. Because again, recognition and reward sit at the heart of a successful loyalty relationship. And I would really urge you to start dropping the word program when you think about loyalty and start to use the word relationship, because that does start to change the way that we think about what it is that we're offering. When we start to look at new other networks like Friends with Benefits, and how we start to see cultural memberships that are powering communities of, say, web artists who all share the same kind of value system, I think we start to see the opportunities here. When that launched in March 2021, it had a waiting list of 3,000, and it now manages its popularity by gating the community with crypto tokens and also having a really strict vetting process. And, while Friends with Benefits is built for the internet, its Discord channels cover a diverse range of interests. And the platform is also beginning now, I think, to expand its influence into the real world, with its members gaining access to real life meetings and after parties in the music world, co-creating city guides that they describe as being an experiment in decentralized curation. And so this way of kind of starting involvement that might seem to be intangible because it's just online, but how that starts to filter out into the Gen Z communities offline and their real world involvements, I think becomes really interesting. And I think we're going to hear more about that in a moment. But just to finish, I want to give you just another short video clip. This has come from Irregular Labs, which is a Gen Z specific research and innovation consultancy. And they've made a short film called Regenerative Futures, which I think really starts to highlight some of the issues that this generation are facing and dealing with.
First generation. What I want for the future can boil down to just one word: accountability. Our food system be plant-based, have the same rights as everyone else, compassion to the form of our culture and ethics.
There we go. So Generation Z, loyalty. Think hierarchical, think partnership, think relationship, and think regenerative. Thanks very much.
Thanks, Chris. That was fascinating. Heterarchical, intelligent word of the week. I probably won't use it down the pub on Friday, but I'm definitely going to use it in the day job, that's for sure. So if you've got some fascinating insights as well in there, particularly around the partnering collaboration of Gen Z with the brand. I mean, just some incredible stuff there. So if you've got any questions for Chris, please add them to the comments. Essentially, if you're talking about the design aesthetic, talking about, let's say, partnering, the crypto clubs, all that stuff. If you've got some questions around that, then please pop it into the comments. You won't go live. I'll be asking the questions for you, for those of you that may be a little bit shy or introverted. So next we've got Ryan Foreman, who's the product manager at Nando's. He's going to talk about Nando's loyalty proposition and how they tuned in to Gen Z's expectations. So Ryan, over to you.
Cheers. Thank you very much, Gary. So yeah, as Gary mentioned, I'm product lead at Nando's. I'm responsible for Nando's rewards program and also for CRM. I'm going to talk a little bit around the journey we've been on in Nando's to evolve to meet Gen Z's expectations. I've been at Nando's for coming up to 3 years now, and during that time, I've been very lucky to work with some amazing people from Red Badger on this and a few other things as well, which we're going to talk about a bit more. And for those of you who don't know, hopefully everybody does. Nando's is a peri-peri restaurant chain in the UK and Ireland.
Hi Ryan, sorry to interrupt, but your slides are not showing. So I think if you can share your screen, there's obviously a technical issue. So if I remove that, if you can just share your screen, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Bring it up to here. Give me 1 second.
Looks like you're in business. Back to you, Ryan. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. So yeah, as I was saying, for those of you who don't know, Nando's is a peri-peri restaurant chain. We've got around 470 restaurants across the UK and Republic of Ireland, and obviously more across the globe as well. And originally originated in South Africa, and it's all about the peri-peri, that mix of Mozambique and Portuguese flavors. So before I jump into what we've done and everything, I want everyone to just cast their mind back a little bit. I think pre-pandemic, COVID is on the tip of everyone's tongue as it is now, but before we were in the lockdowns that we have been, Nando's was a very different place. We had amazing restaurants, and the experience was very different than today. We had lots of tills within our restaurants, and that was the only way you could order, was by going up, speaking to somebody who works there, who we call Nandockers, that work in our restaurants, and placing an order at a till and then sitting down and having it delivered to you. And that's how 90% of all of our orders were fulfilled. We had some penetration within click and collect and delivery, but it was not our heartland at all. Everyone was going to the till and placing a restaurant, and we had a loyalty scheme. So the scheme works that you earn chilies by spending £7 or more. Those chilies turn into rewards, and those rewards turn into free peri-peri. And the scheme was really successful. It was really popular. They had huge penetration, especially amongst our millennial customers. They grew up with it. They saw the value of it. It had seen them through, college, university years, first jobs, etc., etc. We would get 1 in every 3 transactions had a Nando's card associated to it, which we were really happy with. And then of that, 6% of our transactions had a reward redeemed against it, and we thought that was fantastic. It was seen as a big driver of getting customers to come back into Nando's. And then from there, we had new leadership and new vision come in. So Colin Hill, our CEO, came in and set a really strong vision of wanting to be the best restaurant brand that's most loved by Gen Z. So there was that acceptance that yes, millennials are, our core, they love us, and that's what keeps us going. But we need to be there and ready for the next generation that are coming in. And in order to do that, we need to really understand our customers and take the time to make sure that we're delivering experiences that they love to Gen Z, but obviously not alienating everybody else. So we took this and we had a look at what the loyalty scheme was doing, and it became really apparent we weren't meeting our customers' expectations. If we're not meeting those expectations, we're not going to get to that goal of being the most loved restaurant and brand by Gen Z. So when speaking to customers and also to our Nandockers in the restaurants, we saw that they were really frustrated by the plastic card. The best thing, and also sometimes the worst thing about our customers, is that they're incredibly passionate, and they will abundantly tell you, as you can see by all the comments on the slide here, that of what you're doing right and also where we could be doing better. And we should have been doing a lot better with how customers could engage with the loyalty program. Customers had ultimately outgrown the plastic card that we moved on to, and they demanded a better experience. So from this, we set out with Red Badger to look to see how we could exceed our customers' expectations. So we pulled together a product team, one of the first within Nando's, made up of product managers, delivery leads, UI, UX, and engineers, all within the team, with the focus of how can we deliver a better experience for our loyalty customers. And we started off by taking that customer-centric approach and looking at what were the problems and the frustrations that our customers had. And by going into restaurants, speaking to them, doing competitor research. Again, because our customers are the best in the world, they're more than happy to spend time and let us know what they think. So we try to explain try to explore a lot with our customers. What were those frustrations? People would complain about the card, but what was the underlying thing around that? From this, and we spent a lot of time with Gen Z as well, really trying to focus on what their expectations were. And from all of this, what we found out was that for our Gen Z customers, they'd grown up with technology embedded in their life, and therefore when they came to a brand like Nando's, they expected us to be able to already have those solutions to their problems and to meet them there when they're faced with that problem already. They comprehend a lot more. They don't need to be handheld. It's really, a lot of the things are really intuitive to them. And like I touched on previously, but they expect a lot from Nando's. Nando's, like we said, we've got a massive following within our millennial community. And with that, they expect us to be on the pulse and ready if we're just where we've positioned ourselves with the brand. So after understanding all of those problems, we went away to ideate, and looking at all the solutions that we came up with, there was one clear winner that we thought about that would exceed our Gen Z customers' expectations and ultimately everyone else's. So we decided to look at adopting mobile wallet technology for our Nando's cards, so to enable customers to have it on their phone and be able to tap it at the till. As we went through a whole product development process, much like how we started with understanding customers' problems by speaking to them and testing with them, we continued that strategy into product development. So we'd go into restaurants. You can see in the middle there, we've got loads of different email designs to help test what worked with customers, if they understood it, if they would go through and add the mobile wallet to their pass, through to then running a whole beta trial with 12 restaurants within the Leicester area, and just launching it organically to see if customers would take it up and interact with it. And the result of this was we were able to launch the UK's first NFC enabled loyalty mobile wallet pass. So working to get hardware in restaurants, a whole new digital onboarding journey enabled across our website and the app. And it was fantastic. We were really happy with the results that we saw from our beta. And we learned a lot from it, and we made sure that we were listening to customers' frustrations and problems and trying to solve them by putting more control into customers' hands, by making sure they had it on them all the time, that they were able to make sure that they knew what they could get with their rewards, and that was clearly visible on the front of the pass, and that was just easy to interact with. And we had some amazing feedback from our beta group. So we were at the stage we were ready to do a whole launch campaign, and it was a really good one. There were some amazing, really cheeky ideas from a lot of the customer team in Nando's. But unfortunately, I think we all know what happens next is COVID hits, and as we were about to launch everything, we had all the hardware in the restaurants. They all closed within a blink of an eye, and there was a few weeks of just not knowing, so much uncertainty, and not knowing if we were able to launch this, if we should be talking about it. And yeah, just a big moment of despair for this thing that Nando's and Red Badger had been working on for about a year and a half. Luckily though, stuff started to open back up. With delivery was enabled, click and collect as well. But unfortunately for us, it wasn't a return to complete normal. As we know, it was order at table was mandated. So the problems that we were focusing on and trying to solve for our customers just disappeared. They were no longer viable because nobody was going to the till anymore. With all those changes, Nando's had to adapt. The operating model kind of got turned upside down on its head. So instead of 90% of customers placing orders for eat-in, we saw that reverse to delivery being our main channel. And we have an amazing partner in Deliveroo that was able to get us up to speed and start making sure that customers could get their peri-peri as restrictions were relaxed more and more. We managed to launch our own click and collect service as well as demand for that picked up. And as eat-in started opening up, as we said, we had walk-in and order at table was mandated. So tills were still not allowed, but a lot of our and therefore our mobile wallet journey was still left up in the air, and not knowing what to do. But as Nando's had to adapt, so did we at the loyalty scheme. So we took a lot of those learnings from customers and that way of working, and we were able to apply it really quickly and rapidly into the loyalty scheme. So we had before COVID, we had a really small digital footprint, and that's changed massively over the last 2 years. So using the established product team we had from Cardless, we saw the problem being if the loyalty scheme wasn't there for when customers came back to restaurants and started ordering from us, then we needed we could lose them and lose that retention of those customers. We knew we had to launch all of these different journeys with the customers being able to earn and redeem their rewards. So some of the things that we implemented here were being able to give the customers the ability to see what they can get and giving them the power to be able to redeem. So on our click and collect and our delivery channels across web and app, the team were able to really quickly build out these experiences and make sure that we were serving our loyalty customers. And another key thing was automatically giving them having their accounts linked to it as well, just making it effortless. And we got some amazing feedback from customers that it was what they expected. And it's a credit to all the hard work and all the learnings that we've done through Cardless and being able to quickly apply it on within these digital journeys. So where are we now? So hopefully you're all aware, you're still with me, but we now got 3 really well established channels. So eat-in's back open, and we're loving seeing customers come back into restaurants, and customers' behavior has changed. Ultimately, there's more appetite for delivery and click and collect, and we've now got a proper multi-channel loyalty scheme. Our digital footprint has increased massively. We've been able to take a lot of the learnings from everything we've done and apply it, and be able to demonstrate the benefit of the reward scheme to customers in a lot simpler way. And the results have been incredible. So pre-pandemic, we saw 30% penetration rate of our loyalty scheme, and post-COVID, sorry, not post-COVID, we're not there just yet, but with on our digital channels now, click and collect, we see 60% of all of our orders have a Nando's reward card associated to it, and it goes even higher up into the 90s if they're interacting on the app. It's also been a massive driver of our own delivery journey as well, that operates alongside Deliveroo. And in terms of redemptions, not only because it's easier to interact with, but we're also seeing it being engaged with more. So from that 6% of orders that had a redemption against, we're now seeing around 15 to 30% of our orders, depending on which channel it is, having rewards redeemed against. So it's just showing that all those learnings that we took from the cardless work the mobile wallet work that we did through to delivering out these journeys, embedding them within our online ordering journeys, had such a big impact to making sure that our best customers, the rewards customers, were coming back to us, and we're seeing really good retention rates through there as well. And where are we going from there? So at the moment, it's a very value exchange based scheme, and it's doing really well. I think where we want to look to in the future is a lot of what Joel and Chris have already talked about, but how do we build that emotional loyalty with our customers? And what's amazing about Nando's from the inside is that we talk a lot about some amazing things that we do, from our work to become carbon neutral last November, to our ambition to be net zero by 2030. There's some amazing work if you look it up around our fight against malaria, and with our Perry Farms initiative as well. And so it's looking at how do we bring our best customers, the ones that love us the most, and be able to comfortably share these messages with them, and to look at how we can build a relationship with our passions in Nando's, and hopefully it mixes with their passions as well. So I'm not sure exactly what it looks like in the future, but we've got the right passion within Nando's, we've got the right tools, we've got an amazing understanding of our customers now based on the journey we've been through COVID, that I'm really excited about where we're going to take the scheme in the future. So thanks everyone. I think I'll hand back to you, Gary.
That's great. Thanks, Ryan. Well, it's clear that you really responded to your customers to provide a better experience, especially on the value side as well. And appealing to that Gen Z, the values that they appreciate. And amazing. Congratulations on an amazing pivot as well. So thanks very much. Great stuff. Right, next we're going to have the survey. So get your cameras ready on your phones, and please click on that QR code and it will take you to a survey. For every completed survey, Red Badger will donate 5 breakfasts to the Magic Breakfast organization, and it's a great cause. So it costs you nothing. So please participate. That'd be great. We're now going to shift to Q&A. I'll give you some results in a minute on the totalizer. We'll have a nice totalizer to see how much we've actually raised for Magic Breakfast. But I'm going to bring back the speakers, Ryan, Chris, and Joel. Here we go. And we do have a couple of questions from the chat. So the first one is actually for you, Chris, from David Price. He asks, how do you balance the what's in it for me with doing good for others? Which is a great question, isn't it? It's that, So, what are your thoughts?
It was a really great question. And I think, interestingly, it's not just a generational question, because I think there's some other bigger issues at play here around this whole issue. At the Future Laboratory, we talk of being in the transformation economy and the transformation decade. All the research we started doing last decade, mid-teens, started to point towards this idea that the 2020s were going to be about profound change, because everyone was telling us, whether it was an environmentalist, a sociologist, an economist, a technologist, a scientist, that it was about really exponential growth in key categories, that we're just going to mean everything was about massive change. And I think what we're beginning to learn about the social impact of that is that we're very clearly moving from a me mindset to a we mindset. And some of that's being thrust upon us in terms of, if we don't sort this all out together, then we're doomed. To just, I think, a shift from a more hedonistic mindset, which really, I think, has defined most post-war consumer groups, whether you be a Generation Xer, slightly older, a Joneser, or a Boomer, but as well as millennials, where it's very much been about self-gratification and about me. and a very hedonistic outlook, if you think about it, about self-satisfaction. And we're moving to, if you want to get academic about it again, back into a period of eudaimonics, where eudaimonia, which is the Greek philosophical understanding that actually pleasure is best when it's not about self-satisfaction. It's actually about when you create a community that flourishes, where there's a general sense of well-being for all, is the shift that we're seeing across generational groups. So the shift from me to we is making anything that is we attached far more engaging than actually the old-fashioned pulls that were about, well, what's in it for me? How am I going to respond to this? Why should I do this unless it benefits me? And that's the shift, in short, that I think we're beginning to see. That's
fascinating. I think your dog might be agreeing as well.
Yeah. Sorry about that. It's feeding time.
Fascinating, which is great. Thank you. Thanks, Chris. Right, I'll ask another question in a minute, but let's just quickly have a look at the totalizer. So great. We've fed 50 children so far. So please, use the survey, and we'll let everyone know at the certainly in terms of the follow-up email, in terms of actually how many breakfasts were donated. But let's go back to the Q&A, and we have another question, which is around social issues again. I think there's, probably we can wrap up on this one with everyone's sort of perspective, which is trust issues with Gen Z, and having brands take a stance on social issues. And I know, Ryan, clearly you've with Nando's, you're starting to make a stance there. But I'll start again with Chris, and then I'll sort of work around the panel.
I was just doing the survey then, trying to get through that as well. I mean, that's a tricky one. I'd quite like to hear what somebody else would like to kick off on that one first, and then maybe cut in, if that's all right.
Yeah, sure. Well, Ryan, do you want to take a stab at that? I know you've already you referenced it quite extensively on your final slide.
Yeah. So and one of the amazing thing about Nando's is that the owners of Nando's have such dedication to a few of their passions, because it's all about where they're from and trying to address some of those like social injustices, and Nando's doesn't talk a lot about it at all, which I think is a really good thing, because you can see it's authentic. It's not something that I think you referenced it earlier, like Chris, around like woke washing. If I'll be quite bold and say someone like when we do our competitor analysis and looking at an app like Shell, and then saying, oh, we'll opt in and we'll offset your carbon if you fill with us, and it just feels a little bit unauthentic. And I think that's where that trust with some of those actions like that is, even myself, not even just Gen Z, but would like doubt, well, how serious are you about this? If this is against what you're actually doing, is this just you trying to jump on some sort of a bandwagon?
Yeah, it's definitely about genuinely supporting it, isn't it? And you can't just suddenly have a conscience. The fact that Nando's have been doing this kind of stuff behind the scenes the whole time makes it feel much more genuine than some of the woke washing that Chris mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with both Joel and Ryan. And I think, if you're going to brand stand, then you've actually got to really have some meat going with that in terms of supporting and backing what it is that you say you're doing as a brand. And I think increasingly, when we've got a generation that are just moving so quickly through a proliferation of different platforms, they can see what you're up to, and they can see whether you're real within their environment. And I think it goes back to the point I was trying to make earlier, which is that unless you're treating that individual like a real person, then you're not really establishing real trust. So if you're coming from the kind of dynamism of a brand conversation, then I think with this generation, you're going to get stuck. Whereas if you actually are thinking about that notion of friendship and partnership and being there for them and making their lives easier, which is why I think the Nando's shift to digital is such a great example, because there's a sense of facilitation there. There's a sense of, well, this is just going to work. This is going to make your life easier. This is kind of like the logical next step, and all of those things start to coalesce around the idea of trust and partnership, which I think is the critical thing here. And so I always think it's less about trying to find an issue that you can support that is going to attract this demographic, and it's more about gaining their trust by actually being real and authentic yourself.
That's great. Yes, I think authenticity is clearly, sort of, especially in this age of transparency as well, where if you're not, it soon shows. Well, I've just been given a time check by the backstage team. So that concludes our journey for now into Gen Z loyalty. We hope everyone's been inspired. I certainly have. My thanks to the speakers, Chris, Ryan, and Joel, and everyone behind the scenes, my marketing team that's made this happen. Please complete the event survey if you haven't already, and have a great evening, and we'll see you next time. Thanks very much.